A wonderful book, and it's about, I think it was made into a movie too. Yes, it was. And it's about a little white boy who's on a ship with his parents, a cruise ship, and there's a shipwreck, and a black man from the island that they're near saves him. And the little boy has been blinded in the explosion on the ship, and can't see that this man is black, and his parents have taught him to hate black people. But he comes to love this man who saved his life and who is so kind to them. And they wrote the letter, and Theodore saying why they liked the book and why they thought it was so important. And he wrote them a really lovely letter back that I don't quote the whole letter, but part of it in the book.
Do you still have those letters? Or
that letter, yeah.
That's awesome. So what would you say is the most beautiful part of having taught them? What lessons did they teach you?
Excuse me. Well, I think the most important lessons are the lessons I learned in the writing of the book, afterwards from the kids who survived, because what a terrible burden to carry with you and to walk through life with as a young person. On top of that, when they first came back, they were treated like pariah, like they're part of that crazy cult. They're probably dangerous people themselves. And on top of that, you've lost everyone you loved. And yet they struggled to go on and live a good life. Linda is a wonderful parent, and she's got close to her mother, and she's had a good job, and she's reached out to other people. And Stephen is just one of the most amazing people I've ever met. Very humble, but very spiritual in his own particular kind of way, and very caring of other people. Was really kind to me, even though I didn't get to know him that well while he was my student. I gave him a little book of poetry that I've published, and I saved the phone message because it was so sweet. I didn't want to get rid of it, about how the book made him laugh and cry in the space of 3 pages. And he's just a very generous, kind, caring person. Raised his 3 daughters and has done a really good job of it. And
he's also a very good writer.
Oh, he's wonderful.
Do you have writings of his from when he was young? Was he always that good?
No, he wasn't in any of my classes. I was so wish he'd been in my creative writing classes, because then I would have got to know him better. But
so what would you say has been the most, what's been the process, and how emotionally have you processed this? You guys have been writing this since 2005, correct?
Well, we saw the play in 2005, and then it was around 2006 when Ron said, why don't we write this book? And around 2007 when we decided to, okay, we'll each write down our memories and put it together, and that'll be that. But I showed it to Tim Reiterman, who wrote Raven, which I think is the very best book on Jonestown, partly because he'd interviewed people right after Jonestown and survivors, so he had, really good primary material, and then he's a really good writer and a really wonderful researcher, and then he had the wonderful help of his friend and co-writer John Jacobs. But he said, you have to make it into a story, because it was just memories of the baseball team. Here's the poems the kids wrote and what I remember about them. So that was what made it take a long time, because there was all the research we had to do on Jonestown, and then as we found other kids, we'd find other stories or things that changed what we thought was true before. At one point, I just sort of imagined what had happened in Jonestown and realized that's not going to work. It has to be really researched and as true as you can to what happened with the kids in Jonestown.
How did that affect you emotionally as you went through that process?
It was hard a lot of times. It's not like something you want to go face, but it was also a labor of love, and something that both of us really wanted to do, in large part as tribute to both the kids who died and died at such a young age and those who had the courage to keep on going. And so, like everything, it was a mix.
Was it cathartic?
I think so. I think that I learned so much in the process and learned so much that was hopeful. It's just as inspiring the way some of those young people just kept going on and just kept trying and didn't let the horror and the depression overwhelm them. One of our students, I think perhaps that did happen to her, but we don't know exactly how she died in Oregon. We just know she died in Oregon. But
do you have any regrets now? Is there anything in hindsight that you think you could have, that you saw, or, I mean, you can't live with those regrets, but is there anything looking back now that would have triggered
well,
to do something?
you can always wish that you'd been more perceptive or taken more time to delve into things. But again, Stephen is an inspiration. He talks about his girlfriend, Michelle, who died in Jonestown, and dreams that he's had about her. And at the end of telling the dream, I can not cry. Maybe you can erase this part.
It's all right, I read it too. It was an emotional.
He says, she has forgiven me, I have forgiven me. So I think it's important to learn to forgive yourself, even when terrible things happen.
He seems to have done that remarkably. You watch the evolution of his acceptance through his writings.
Yes.
Do you feel like this process has also allowed you to do the same
I
thing?
think in a way it has, yes. Because it makes you think about things and then think about them again and then think about them in a different light and then realize, I was a really busy teacher and I didn't have time to do, I loved all the kids in my classes. I mean, that's why I loved teaching so much. Some of them a little harder to love than others, but
I have 4 children, some are harder to love. You can erase that part.
Okay, then you have to erase my crying. I know I look terrible when I cry.
No, don't worry. No,
It's beautiful, actually, to see that response, because I feel like a lot of people don't realize how many people were affected by what happened, despite not necessarily being
Right.
in Jonestown. There's so many people that have an emotional connection
Yeah.
to the atrocity that happened, and it's a beautiful moment
Yeah.
to see that.
Yeah, I can still remember too the kind of pall that lay over the school when we found out about the deaths. And
what was that like?
actually, I'm putting that out of order because we found out so many kids were gone and we didn't get any answers back. And it wasn't until after I had moved on to the next school, Galileo, that I got the news of the kids. So I was kind of alone with it there because other kids didn't know those kids or know much about Opportunity. They just thought this awful thing had happened, but for me it was personal.
Go.
Were you pretty aware of which Temple kids went to Jonestown, or was it most of them that did go?
It was most of them. Vance White, I think he had to have been in the Temple to be such a good friend of Cornelius, but we couldn't find him on any lists anywhere, not on the Jonestown lists. Maybe he's like our student Manny, who just managed to escape from the Temple before people were sent off.
So then how did you cope when you first found out that all of it had happened? How was your
Well,
reaction?
even then, things happened in pieces. Like first there was an article in the newspaper listing about 400 names, in the Chronicle. And I can remember sitting there and looking through for the names of students that I knew, but it wasn't all of the kids that I knew that were there. And it's only now that the website has put everything together, and Mac has done such a wonderful job with that website, keeping track of everything. I don't know how he did it. He's supposed to be retired now, but he's still working on it. And but so now we have the faces as well as the names and some facts about all the kids who died.
Do you go to Evergreen for the anniversary, or are you planning to
I've
go?
been there 3 or 4 times. Then they changed it to Memorial Day because there was somebody else from the LA temple. You probably know that whole story, so I won't go into it. But so they kind of changed it to Memorial Day. And I've gone there just on my own a couple of times. And I've gone, Ron and I were very kindly invited to some of the gatherings of people afterwards, like we were kind of made a part of the family, which also felt very good.
Jordan's house?
Pardon?
Is that a Jordan Vilches?
Yes, 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 yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about her? Do you know her?
I don't know her well. She's a wonderful artist, and oh, I'm sorry.
No, that's all right.
Messed with it
Just
again.
wanted to make sure.
A really warm, nice person. She came by Kathy Barber, who was in the temple and has done that beautiful book called Who Died, where she made